every single dream.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Sherry Braithwaite, and this is Cathy and Jeff Teichert. They are life coaches and authors. I wanted to talk to them today about finding joy in God's plan for you. We are today where they were twice, and they'll talk about their story. It's so inspiring to hear what they have to say. And so I've had a lot of thoughts lately about my own life and God's plan for me. And I want to ask you this. Has your life been in total alignment with what you planned for yourself? I don't know if there is anything.
Sherry, my ex-wife had a saying that she used to say when we were married: if you ever want to give God a good laugh, tell him your plans.
I'm sure he has all kinds of laughs from my plans that I try to share with him. That's a good one. I like it. So for me, my life has been, when looking back, I'm only able to look back and say this, is that my life is more beautiful than it would have been if I would have gone according to what I planned. Because God's plans are so much greater. I make mistakes and he fixes them. I mess up and I miss the target, and somehow he helps me pick up those pieces and brings me back, or he coaches me back into alignment with his plan for me. If we lose track of his love and his plan for us, then sometimes it feels like our life can feel a little out of order. Or being in a place where we think we should not be. And that's why I wanted Cathy and Jeff to talk to us, because they're encouraging. They're a witness of God's hand in our lives. And they have a lot of great wisdom to share with us about that. So their story is inspiring. They mostly teach the mid-singles, Latter-day Saint singles, and those who believe that those who want to believe that they will find their match. I know the Teicherts are really good at offering plenty of encouragement for that. They created a podcast called Lily Pod. And I just saw an announcement from you guys that it recently reached 2,000 listens, which is awesome. Yes. And their Facebook page, the Facebook group, and the Instagram page can be found at Love in Later Years. Their website is loveinlateryears.com. Each week they send out an awesome Lily letter. It's always encouraging and inspiring. And they write several articles on social media, which they post to Lily Gems on their website. I don't know about Lily Gems. I need to go look that up. I didn't know about Lily Gems.
We've got like 140 essays that Jeff wrote on Facebook, all right there and categorized and everything.
Oh, so it's on Facebook. It's
on our website.
Okay, but
they were originally posted on Facebook.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, very good. So, and they also coach for Dating Olympics. I'm the owner of Dating Olympics, and they are the coaches for that as well. And our private Thriving Singles Community Facebook group. They're also there to help mentor people and to share their insights on that as well. So Jeff and Cathy, welcome. We're so glad that you were here today.
Thanks for having us.
You guys own a successful podcast, and
which you've been on as a guest.
Yes, that's true. And you guys manage a Facebook page for single adults. You are in business to help us. So what I want to know is why you do it, and what keeps you doing it. Tell us why.
Tell her how it got started.
Sure.
Yes.
Well, actually, when I was married to my second wife, I started writing a book, and I realized after I'd written portions of 4 or 5 chapters that I really wasn't ready, that I wasn't far removed enough from my first divorce and so on, that I wasn't ready to write this book, and I shelved it. And then one night, I don't know, a year and a half or 2 years ago, it was in April. Cathy and I,
April of 2020.
yeah, Cathy and I were married by this time. And one night I woke up to use the bathroom or something and couldn't get back to sleep. So I went downstairs to my office and opened up my computer, and I thought, oh, I'm a lawyer if others don't know, but I thought 3:30 a.m. legal work seemed a little too heavy. So what else could I work on or do? And I stumbled across this book that I had started writing 5 years before or whatever. And I reread what I had written, and I thought, geez, this is pretty good. So I wrote a little more, added to those chapters, and the next morning I mentioned it to Cathy, and I told her what I forgotten I even started this book, but.
And you started it based on your experience as a mid-single before your second marriage, right?
Right. I think the thing that prompted me to start writing it is when I was single, I was in a number of Facebook groups for mid-singles. And in fact, that's how Cathy and I ultimately met, was on a Facebook group for mid-singles. But anyway, somebody posted in there a question: how long has it been since your last real date? The first answer was 14 years.
Wow.
And then it went from there, 10 years, 3 years. There were a few people that had been on dates recently, including me, but I was astounded that here's a group set up for mid-singles to meet and date and whatever. And yet many of the people that were actively participating had not dated in years and maybe decades. And I started puzzling with myself, why is that? Why are people who want to date and have a companion and and who join groups like that still not dating? And so anyway, that I think more than anything was the first thing that sort of prompted me to start that project way back when. But when I first told Cathy about it, I said, I looked at this book and I actually think it's a good start and it has possibilities. And she immediately said, I want in. And so
we first wrote the book, and it just came pouring out of us in about 3 or 4 months. It was all written in that fast. But then we had advanced readers, we had editors, we had formatting, and for over a year we've been perfecting and polishing it. And it is like, it's going to be coming out just in a week or two. We're so excited. Yeah. But I think the biggest thing that motivated us to write it and then to start loving later years as an organization to support mid-singles is because we didn't have that. And we felt so alone. And it's like a deer in the headlights when you first get divorced. Like, you have no idea what you're in for. And there's just so much that support that I think is needed out there, and we felt that lack, and so that's what motivates us.
Yeah, I mean, it's the book we wish we would have had.
Oh, that's good motivation.
When we became mid-singles. So
since we're talking about your book, I want to know, what was your favorite topic to write about, or the one that maybe flowed the most?
Do you want to see it?
Yes, we want to see it. Intentional courtship. I love it.
Yeah, and then this isn't going to be there because that's it says not for resale.
Oh, gotcha.
They won't send us one without that.
So until we publish it.
Yeah.
Well, you have that original one. That's very cool. Yes, I love it. I love the picture that you chose to put on the front. That's good.
Yeah.
So intentional. What do you mean by intentional? Why? What is it all about?
We love the word intention. Every subsequent marriage after a first, the statistic for divorce goes up, which means the chances of success goes down. However, we like to see it as, well, we've got a good 27% chance of making this marriage work if we're intentional about the choices we make, the agreements we have, that we do things different than we did them before.
And do things different than the average.
Yeah, that is so helpful, because where I am right now, when I know that I will get married again, my plan on it, and I also plan on staying married to that person. I don't plan on divorcing again, and because that happened to me once, I realize my vulnerability to that even though I might plan it and think it's a great idea, it still could happen. But I think there are things we can do to prevent it. We can divorce. I've heard the term divorce proof your next marriage. And that kind of sounds like that's what you help us do in this book. Is that right? Is that kind of what you help us with? How to be intentional?
The first part is all about finding peace. So it's a mid-singles guide to peace, progress, and pairing up. And the first 8 chapters are dedicated to finding peace after relationship loss, whether it be through death or divorce, or even just never having been married and having frustration in the relationship department. Finding peace with yourself is going to help you bring a healthy self to a healthy relationship. And then the progress is the dating part, and that's probably what most people would assume the book's about, being, called intentional courtship.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But it's very holistic in its approach, and it's more than just dating. I mean, there's no way this book would be so long if it were just about dating. It's the whole package, right? And then the pairing up portion is more about thinking through what kind of person you want to attract into your life, and who you think you would be a best matchup for. And of course, I don't think it ever ends up exactly how you imagine, but I think working with the Lord through prayer, you can discover the answers over time as you date and get to know different people, and develop relationships that are serious and potentially marriage.
Good. So which chapter or which section is your favorite, Cathy? And then I'll ask Jeff. I can tell you what my favorite is going to be. I haven't read it yet, but I know I can tell you which one I'm going to go for first.
I really liked the qualities you're looking for. That really brought back a lot of memories to my mind when I was dating very intentionally, trying to look for my forever someone. The list, qualities you're looking for, and that's chapter 18. And I just remember thinking, because I narrowed it down. I had a long list, and I narrowed it down, and I thought I was kind of being sneaky, because what I did was I had 4 main categories, and then all my subcategories kind of fit in there. So I could still have my big long list, but I do think it really helped me clarify what I wanted to create in a marriage. And that was the most important part. And then, of course, there were things that would be nice to have, but they were definitely negotiable. Where there were definitely the 4 things that I wanted to make sure were solid.
So your must-have list, and then your would be nice to have list, and then and this is how I've heard it, and then a bonus. Like there's a few bonuses probably. This is awesome, but if it doesn't happen, I can live without it. It's okay.
Yeah.
And then the list of will not be able to tolerate, like it's a no-go.
Because you learn from that experience with relationships what you don't want. And if you continue focusing on what you don't want, you're going to attract more of what you don't want. And so what you want to do is flip it around and find, and start speaking in terms of what you do want based on the opposite of what you don't want, if that makes sense.
Don't look for somebody that's not angry. Look for somebody who's peaceful.
Yes, I get that. That makes sense. Yeah, but I want to ask Jeff what his favorite is in this.
I mean, I'll tell you.
The whole book. It's hard to pick one.
Yeah, I mean, it's like asking you which of your children is your favorite. Yes. I really felt strongly in the beginning about the chapter on overcoming fear, because every mid-single that I've gotten to know well, me included, had a certain amount of trauma related to past relationships. And, we can all get triggered. And I think that's the biggest impediment, really. We have a tremendous amount of fear about risking again.
Yeah.
And I mean, mid-singles and younger singles both will go through incredible backflips trying to figure out a way to find love without risk. And it will never happen.
And if it happened, it meant the other person took the risk.
Right.
Yes.
And so overcoming fear, I think, is a really important one. And I felt like that came out really clearly, and I was very happy with it. Another one that I really liked was Challenges of Mid-Single Latter-day Saint Men, because I think men often get overlooked. In a divorce situation in the church, a lot of times the woman gets a lot of compassion, meals brought in, whatever, and the man kind of gets treated with suspicion. And that chapter discusses that. What's that?
Sorry, I just was saying, yeah, I have heard that. I haven't noticed it, but I've heard it.
Yeah, well, I felt it acutely in that period of time. And so I provide some suggestions in there for what do you do about the rumors and about, the speculation and things like that. So I talk about that.
Okay.
Also, a lot of men go through some significant financial trouble, and I did too. And so you add on to, this overwhelming feeling, having lost your wife and a good chunk of time with your kids, and in many cases a job or a business, and sometimes those things lead up to divorce, or at least contribute to it, push it over the edge. And then you're newly single and celibate when you're 40 years old or something, and you're trying to keep the law of chastity and your other temple covenants, but because of financial problems, you've fallen a little behind on your child support and you can't go to the temple anyway. And that whole scenario is such a common story that I thought I should share it. And I asked people, what is the point? There's a lot of men that, something like 80% of divorced Latter-day Saint men basically just disappear, don't continue with the church. And I never understood that until I was in that position where I was so anxious about everything coming at me and the financial problems, and I didn't even want to open my mail. I that's how anxious I felt. And trying to get to figure out how to get my temple recommend back and get my child support caught up as it mounted, was really discouraging. And I can see where some people say, well, I can't go to the temple anyway. Why keep the law of chastity? Why keep my covenants? And I do suggest in that chapter that people that men keep their covenants, and there are very good reasons to do it.
Fuel to the fire, right?
While at the same time giving total empathy and understanding for the predicament.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And it's, I would say to men out there, if you went on a mission or if you were endowed in the temple, in any case, you were anointed to become a king and a priest, and you've been given the power to reclaim your life and to work miracles and to become what God knows you can become if you don't give up. Yeah. But we aren't called to keep our promises to God only when it's easy. Sometimes we're called on to do it when it's really tough. And I know really tough. I've got a master's, PhD, whatever in that. But anyway, so that chapter was important to me also.
Were there any chapters that were especially difficult for you guys, where you knew you needed to talk about it, but it probably wasn't so easy?
So there was one for me, and it ended up being the very last chapter written, which actually makes sense because, as we understand, woman was the crowning creation of for our world.
Oh, yeah.
And it was the crowning creation for our book.
Of the book.
Yep, the last chapter to get fully written was chapter 5, Unique Challenges of Mid-Single Latter-day Saint Women.
Oh, okay.
And I think the reason it was difficult for me is because, I mean, women deserve an awesome chapter. And I felt a lot of responsibility to make sure I did it justice. But
it's awesome, by the way.
I'm sure you did. Yes.
It came together in about 14 hours of solid writing. Like I just sat down and I'm like, okay, I am not going to keep putting this off. Everything else is written. This is going to happen. And I just 14 solid hours. And when I was done, and it felt so good, but I was so tired, I was like, I'm going to read this tomorrow. And then when I read it the next day, I was like, yes, this is what I wanted. This is what I had hoped for.
So good. One thing that I think is, you guys have changed my perspective on this. My closed mind that I used to have of the men that I would date who need to be close to my age range. So what is your age gap? And give us some encouragement on that. Open up our minds and our possibilities with that.
Well, she is 15 years older than I am.
Yeah. Don't do that. But you guys both look the same age. I mean, look at that. Just look like they're exactly the same age. But we know that Jeff is a little older.
Yeah, a little older. So
we actually have an interesting coincidence that came up about this last night, but I'll let Cathy tell it.
Okay. So, and in fact, our book is now outdated, which we'll just leave it because, it's ready to go and we're not changing it. But
oh yeah.
Okay. So for the listeners, you get to know something extra special.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So first of all, we both have 2 sons. We both had 2 previous marriages. Our sons are about 3.5 years apart from each other, but about 12 years apart from each set. Okay. So my boys are 3.5 years apart, his are 2, and our youngest share the exact same birthday, 12 years apart.
Oh, wow.
So then we set our wedding date for May 11th. And the reason we set it for May 11th is because we love the synergistic idea behind one strong person, getting together with one other strong person and becoming greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
Okay, so together we're 11 rather than 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we chose 11 for a reason. And then after we set the date at the temple, just like, your birthday's, do you care if we share it?
No.
Okay, your birthday is June 30th. Mine is July 30th. And did you know that makes us exactly 11 years and 11 months apart?
11 years and 11 months. Oh, that's awesome.
Yes.
Oh.
Now,
Another great coincidence.
oh my gosh.
from
I can't
yesterday.
believe this actually is true. Like, honestly, like it just dumbfounds me. But so we went to our stake conference this weekend. The adult session on Saturday night reminded us we really need to take a look at our patriarchal blessings. And apparently Jeff had never read mine. Like,
I hadn't.
Which is really weird because we've read the Book of Mormon together. We've written a book together. I don't know how this didn't happen sooner, but it had been a while since I'd looked at mine. And anyway, so we just came straight home and we're like, okay, let's not put this off. Let's just do it right now.
Well,
Okay.
yeah.
So he put them both in his planner so that he could reference them often. And he was looking at the dates and guess exactly to the day how far apart our blessings are.
11 years.
And 11 months.
Oh, wow.
I got mine August 25th. He got his September 25th.
Wow. So cool. So there is a lot more meaning to that 11 than anything.
Yeah,
You really keep
than we ever knew before we chose it. And also, so we figured out though, based on, because there's different numbers of days in the months, I was 17 and 56 days old. He was 17 and 57 days old.
Wow.
So we're one day off of that, but basically we got our patriarchal blessings at the exact same age.
Wow.
With one day off.
It would be probably only God that gets to watch both of your lives and how they align, like at the different times in your life, and you start to compare and you see the beauty of how it all worked out, how you are today where you need to be, and all of these past experiences brought you to where you are today. That's what I believe. And I believe that what you're doing with us in our struggles, the things that you're teaching us and supporting us in, that we will get to a place also where we need to be. And I also think that maybe we need to be right here, like today is where we need to be, and having acceptance of that is actually it's freeing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Instead of saying it's not supposed to be this way, or my life wasn't supposed to turn out like
Which is
this,
always a miserable thought.
Maybe to think God knows what he's doing and this is my path.
Yeah. And that's exactly the point I wanted to make in this discussion, for sure. I'm so glad you brought that up. Tell us about that. How do you, if you were to give us all your best advice, what would be your number one advice in helping someone to find the joy in God's plan for them? How do you?
Well, let me say one thing before we launch into our own story about that and everything.
Okay.
And one example that I brought up lately in a number of forums is President Reagan. He gave an interview shortly before he left the White House where he talked about how disappointed he had been as a young man for not getting the job as the manager of the sporting goods department at Montgomery Ward. And
also an engagement that got
he had a broken
off.
engagement, not by his choice, and he was heartbroken over that. And he said, but a few weeks later, I got a job as a baseball announcer in a small market. And I gradually moved to bigger markets and gradually moved from there to Hollywood, where I was an actor, which gradually led him into politics, which changed the world. I mean, made him president of the United States. And Tom Brokaw said to him, so if you had gotten that job at Montgomery Ward's, and he said, might still be working there. He said, and Brokaw says, instead of president of the United States. And he said, right.
Wow.
And if he had married that girl, maybe he would have stayed in Illinois and never gone out to California, and things would have turned out different. He wouldn't have met the love of his life, Nancy Davis Reagan. And so the things that when he was younger looked to him like tragedies really turned out to lead to the very best things in his life.
Yeah.
And I actually, I'm Facebook friends with Janice Cat Perry.
Yeah.
And I had a chance to chat with her a few years ago. And she told me a little bit of her story that she started writing music when she was laid up in bed for 3 months, having compound fractured her leg, and she literally couldn't get up. And so she spent the time writing music and found out she was good at it.
Yeah. Wow.
And, as we know, she's pretty much rewritten the children's songbook in the church.
Yeah.
And made this profound impact. And you think, no one wants to get their leg broken and spend 3 months in bed, but she found her calling at that time and blessed, millions.
Yeah.
So
True. How do you relate to those two stories? People are doing that, doing their mission.
Well, I thought the worst thing that could ever happen was my first divorce. It was really hard and so painful. And I created a lot of drama around it. I created a lot of pain for myself, suffering that wasn't necessary. I mean, I've learned a lot about how to avoid that. And that's why we try to teach it so that other people won't make those mistakes.
Yeah. But I mean, if you get divorced, you're going to grieve, certainly. But you can prolong it with all those stories and all the drama that Cathy's talking about.
Well, yeah. And so what I see now, my life hasn't turned out yet. I mean, we're still growing, but I can see all the ways in which previous marriage and divorce prepared us for a much better marriage to each other And, we've talked about, well, what if we just met sooner? Well, I mean, when we were younger, that would have been a big problem, right?
I think she was 14 or 16 when I got married the first time.
21, she was 10. Yeah.
Yeah, we have funny, interactions about that. And the thing is, we've experienced a lot of the same life, like cultural, I don't know, how the world changes as you grow. And we've experienced all those things just at a different time point in our, progression. But it's amazing how much we had in common and how much experience in life we had shared, had never having met each other and being, the 11 years and 11 months apart.
We each lost a sibling to death when they were very young.
While we were just in the process of having our first child. So for me, it was 6 months. My first boy was 6 months old, and I think yours was.
He wasn't born yet, but he was
yet.
born 9 months later.
Yeah. So yeah, that's
in the same few
but
years.
Yeah, I think to answer your question is that, some of my best things have definitely come from my worst things. And even though I tried to believe that would happen, I know as a mid-single, I didn't know. I mean, nobody knows what their future holds until it happens, right?
Yes.
So I think the way to hold on to hope is just to have that belief that it will. I don't need to see it. I don't need to know what it looks like. I just know it will, and hold on to that and then work towards it.
If I can say something about that too, I think that in our faith, we have a lot of cliches we throw around about eternal companions and eternal marriage and all of that. But really, if we dig deep into the scriptures, the Abrahamic covenant is really all about eternal families. It's, Abraham was promised, because of his devotion and consecration of himself to God, that he would have posterity as numerous as the stars in the heavens or the sand on the seashore. And eternal marriage is not just a prerequisite to entering the celestial kingdom. It's kind of what the celestial kingdom is. It's like, well, why can't I get into the highest degree of glory even if I don't have an eternal family? That's kind of what the highest degree of celestial glory means. It isn't a prerequisite. It is the outcome. It's the blessing.
But we know those blessings will be available as long as we want them and we're faithful. So
sure,
that isn't something anyone needs to be too concerned about.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not trying to lecture anyone about it. I'm trying to say that, to me, having really dug deep on that subject for years, my divorce was a huge blow. It felt like I'd lost my exaltation, that hope was sort of gone. And I mean, I was depressed.
Hope was definitely gone.
I was depressed for probably 4 years. And it was waking up every morning feeling like I'd been kicked in the stomach, carrying that pain around all day, taking it to bed every night, feeling completely out of control of what was happening with my children and my life. My mind was on other things, so my business took a nosedive. And so I was broke too. And I mean, it was like one by one, I lost everything in life within a 2-year period. Everything that I really cared about, my career, I had lost an election in that period of time, early in that period of time also. And then, my wife and my kids and the rest of it. And I thought, I've lost everything Job lost except his health. And I don't think my health benefited from any of that. But thankfully I didn't suffer the things he suffered, but I felt like, other than that, I'm Job. I came back to Utah for a period of time trying to get my feet under me. I had been offered a partnership in a law firm. Within a few months, it was apparent that it was a mistake. That just added to more of the desperate depression I felt at the time. And so I remember doing a lot of soul searching, and there was this night when I was taking my kids back up to Washington, where their mom lived at the time, and it was New Year's Eve. I was taking them back after they had been with me for the holidays, and I pulled off at the Flying J in Snowville, Utah, which, as you know, is tiny. I pulled off and to go in and buy a soda or something, and I came out and my car wouldn't start. And I tried everything I knew. I tried jumping it. I tried starting it by compression because it was stick shift. I tried everything that I would normally try. I cleaned the battery posts, the whole thing, and it was dead. And so I went in and I asked the folks at the counter, who they knew that could come and have a look at it. And it's New Year's Eve, nobody's working, and a tow truck guy did come out, and he said, "I'm not a mechanic, I can't tell you for sure, but I think your timing belt's gone," which turned out to be the case. But I said, "What does that cost to fix?" And he said, "You're looking at least $600. And I knew I had about $300 in my checking account. And so I said, I need time to think. So he left. We spent the night in the truckers lounge at the Flying J
On New Year's Eve.
on New Year's Eve, watching MMA fights, because that was what one of my sons liked at the time. And I'm just laying there on the floor, feeling the lowest I've ever felt in my life. I have a doctorate and a postdoctorate, and here I am, dead in the water in some tiny little town in the middle of nowhere, without the money to get my kids home. And I was just feeling this huge amount of shame. And I remember, things worked out. I ended up borrowing money from my parents to fix the car, and they brought me their old car to get the boys back, and things worked out. But I remember thinking, like Scarlett O'Hara on Gone with the Wind, with God as my witness, I'll never be hungry again.
Yeah.
Well, a year later, New Year's started to roll around, and I was thinking about that experience and realizing that my life wasn't all that different, not as different as I would have wanted from the year before. And it really bothered me. And, because I was still living just hand to mouth. And so I did a lot of praying, and the answer that kept coming to me is, you are not meant to hide your light under a bushel. You're meant to shine. I was going in, I had started my own law firm, and I was going in every day. But I think I was still hiding in a way. I wasn't putting myself out in front of people. And so I started doing that. And I made a really bold Facebook post, which led to a career opportunity that took me to Texas for 3 years. And that allowed me to sort of breathe and get back on my feet, and not be, one car repair away from homeless. And so it did, that time in Texas helped me to feel like I was getting back on my feet. And I remember thinking, I bought a car while I was down there, and just thinking every time I got behind the wheel, how grateful I was to have this car. And that was fun to drive, and it got me where I needed to go. And, it was a big step up from what I had before. And it taught me that this experience that, when I was a kid and in my first marriage, I thought that being married, having a family, and all of that stuff, and a career was just normal. And the problem with that thinking is, if it's just normal, it's not special. And I remember when things started to come back to me in Texas, and I went through another short-term little second marriage there. But even with all of that, I don't take things for granted the way I used to. I don't think of, having a loving spouse as being just normal. I always see it as special. If I wake up in the middle of the night and I see Cathy sleeping next to me, I'm like, oh, so grateful.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so definitely having lost can, I mean, it doesn't always, but it can, if you allow it, can really increase your appreciation in the future for a partner who shows up later in life. And
anything else good that comes into your life too.
Well, and love in later years isn't just about finding a romantic partner to couple with, but I mean, it certainly is that, but it's also creating more love in your life in general. Just because if you've lost love or, a significant other, sometimes we can feel like all love is lost, and love really actually is something that lives inside of us. It's the light of Christ. It's God's love, and we own it, like we can walk around with it all the time. It doesn't have to be with a significant other. And so developing more love in later years, or even love for later years. Because some people have said, oh, are you geriatric? Like, are you just talking to old people? Like, no, like the thing is you have to invest in love, in yourself, in others, in relationships, in order to have love in later years. So it's more of like thinking about retirement, but in terms of love,
And to us, later just means later than a traditional first marriage in your 20s.
Right.
So it's not latest, it's not when you're really old, but I mean, but
it can be.
It prepares you for that, certainly.
Maybe later than you might think is right, or,
Yeah.
I mean, when I married Cathy, I was 50. And you might think, that's a long time to wait for your eternal companion. I think she was worth the wait, but but I think too, I think I left that story in Texas, but I got laid off from my corporate job when oil and gas prices plummeted. 2015, let's jump ahead 20 years, 2 decades. But I lost my job, got laid off, and I came back to Utah. It felt like deja vu. My car was threatening to throw a rod. I was unemployed again, and I was couch surfing on my parents at my parents' house, and so that was kind of what my life was like when I met Cathy. I had just started a new law firm out of pure necessity, and she could tell you, I was very honest about it. On the first date, I said, not in a position to move forward with a serious relationship anytime soon, because I've got to get back on my feet financially and get my own place to live. And, there's all these other things that I need to do.
I'll tell you, one of the things on my list of 4 that were non-negotiable requirements is to be able to create with my spouse a house of order. And that included finances.
Yeah.
So that was hard.
First date. You made this clear on your first date.
Honesty is also really important to me, though. So it was better that he did.
Yeah. I mean, I would tell people in the audience, don't lie or embellish to impress someone, because eventually, if that relationship goes anywhere, it's going to come out, and then you're going to have a lot of explaining to do. And it's just, if you meet someone who's genuine, they can realize you're a good person that's been through some bad stuff and you're building back. And, I spent 5 years building a law firm, both before and after Cathy and I were married, and built it from 0 to 6 figures. And then I got offered a job that came literally kind of out of left field, which I now have at the Utah Attorney General's office, being a full-time constitutional lawyer. And if you know my history, that's like a dream come true. And I think I've got this incredibly blessed life, not just 6-figure income, but doing something I love, with the love of my life by my side. And, if I hadn't gone through my first and second divorces, if I hadn't got laid off by my corporate job in Houston, I might still be out in East Texas running oil and gas titles, and single. And I think one important thing, like the other two stories that I told, one important thing to realize is all things work together for them that love God. That's what it says in Romans.
Yeah.
And so if something happens to you that looks like a tragedy and feels like one,
It just might not be.
it might not be. It might be that thing that, God may be slamming that door because, I got a much better door for you over here.
Yeah.
Well, and somehow God put into my brain and heart after a while, like we knew each other for over 2 years before we got married. And for a whole year of it, we didn't date. And that's all in our love story in the book. And that's another one of
The last chapter, right?
Yes. So anyway, what I was getting at is that hard, factor on the first date of no, this is not, no, no, like I don't want financial problems. And I think like him, he lost everything that Job did except for his health. I lost everything Job did except for money. That's the one thing I was good at. And but I wrecked my health doing it. I mean, I just worked through the anxiety, and I just like pushed through the super mom syndrome, and I just like did it all. And eventually it caught up to me. And unfortunately that kind of hit towards the beginning of our marriage. And that was hard.
At the beginning.
Yeah, it was
Within
really hard.
a couple of weeks.
Before and after, really. I was having some health troubles about 6 months before we got married too.
Right.
But it got worse instead of getting better like we'd hoped. So, but it's improved a lot during the time that we've been doing Love in Later Years. I still have to be cautious and, do certain things to stay on top of it, but it's gotten a lot better, and I'm really grateful for that. And
if not for those tragedies we've talked about, your health problems and my money problems and all that, the world wouldn't have Love in Later Years.
But not in the same way, because we did learn a lot. And I think there was always something special about Jeff. He came with so many bonus qualities, and I believe that I learned over time that he was willing to step into the role of working with me to create order in our home, financially and otherwise. And so I just, for some reason, I think God just helped me have faith that it would work out. That didn't make it easy, and it didn't make it fast, but like he said, I mean, we're now in this position that's completely different than when we first got married, and certainly way different than when we first met. But sometimes it takes 5 years instead of 1, like we'd like it to.
Yeah, I mean, I used to tell Cathy when we were first married, because she saw me working 12-hour days and driving off to network with people all the time, and having one appointment on top of another for different things. And I told her, I'm running a real 3-ring circus here. So, but I said, I think, a year or 2 from now, you're gonna see that it was worth it. And ultimately, what's that?
She had to trust that and trust the Lord that what you were speaking was true.
And it did feel like a 3-ring circus, but it created a law firm that supported us well, and reached 6 figures finally by the time I sold it. As I said, it was not a happy day when I got laid off from my corporate job in Houston. But when I think about what I've achieved since I came back here, starting over almost at zero again, with God's help, it blows my mind.
It's so incredible. I want both of us to, we could talk forever. In fact, I was just thinking it would be so fun to have dinner with you guys. And I'm gonna, when I get engaged, we're gonna come to your house and have dinner. Well, actually, maybe before we get engaged, we'll have to get your coaching first. But this is my thought I want to close on is the wrapping up the encouragement that I have. I'm in a place where I'm right in the middle of it. I'm in a place where I still have the hope that someday my life will be there, you know. And I love the law of attraction that you talk about. I'm going to be excited to read about the law of attraction. I can create this the image or create this life that I have in my mind and my heart and align it with God's will. But ultimately, and in the end, it will only be God's will. It will be how he designs for it to be. So that's what I have a testimony of that, but I would love to hear your encouragement and testimony. Can we still create the life that we would love and have it be God's will? Is that possible?
I think we only learn through hardship when there's something to be learned by it. And if we continue creating that pattern, it's probably because we haven't learned the lesson yet. And so whenever I've seen like a repeat in my own life, I have to think, okay, what did I not learn the first time? God, please show me, because I want to learn it so I don't keep repeating this. And I believe that we learn from our hardships, but we learn even more from our successes. I mean, if we know how to do something, to do a relationship well, we learn a lot more about how relationships work, right? Than through the hardship of having relationships fail. And I don't think we're here in this life to fail. I think we're here to be successful and to be joyful. And so I guess my words of encouragement and my feeling on this is that we absolutely are creators in association with him, and he'll let us know if we're not on the right track. Otherwise, I think he is all for us creating goodness.
Yeah, I love that. It's good encouragement. Jeff, do you have something to add to that?
I was just going to say that if I could leave the audience with anything, I know a lot of you are discouraged about where your life is, the position you find yourself in. I know many of you have repeated the familiar phrase, I did everything right. I got married in the temple to a returned missionary and paid my tithing, and, you know, go down the list of things. And yet, why am I in this situation? And I know many have lost a lot. And so two things I want to say is, number one, you can expect, I believe, that out of your biggest tragedies, God will bring your greatest opportunities for happiness. And I've seen this so much that it feels really real to me. And my own life, I feel like, is a living testimony of that. And I mean, look in the Bible, you know, you got Joseph, who's sold into Egypt as a slave by his brothers, people who should love and protect him, sold him as a slave and faked his death to their father and broke his heart. And if you were sold into Egypt by a loved one, you have hope. Why? Because look at what happened to Joseph. He sunk even lower when he got to Egypt. He got thrown in prison for a crime he didn't commit. And he ends up, through a very improbable series of events, basically becoming the prime minister of the country, saving millions from starvation, including his own family who came to Egypt looking for food. And then he tells his brothers not to be angry with themselves, and that it wasn't them that brought him to Egypt, it was God, and that there was a purpose for him to save the country in being brought there. And I think, Joseph, one of the greatest of the Old Testament prophets, if he had to go through trials like that to become what God intended for him to become, you might too.
Yeah.
And you might be in the middle of that right now. And I'm telling you, it isn't as dark and hopeless as it feels. Because I've felt about as dark and hopeless. I had the moments when I wanted to die. I really did. But it can come back to you. And toward the end of the book of Job, God gave Job twice as much as he had before.
Yeah.
And God's given me twice as much as I had before in every way. And so that's one thing, is keep that hope alive, that vision of a better day. And then the second thing is gratitude is the key to happiness. You can only enjoy anything in your life to the extent that you're grateful for it and that you appreciate it, because that is what brings those feelings of happiness about it. And if you think it's just normal that everybody has a family, everybody has, a home and a career, and then it doesn't feel special, but it is special.
And during the hardest part of my divorce, I remember doing a gratitude journal and it being one of the best things they could do. I mean, it was really difficult for me to be grateful because I just that dark perspective was over me, but making the effort helped me come out of that despair.
That's a good advice.
And the final suggestion is to get our book, because it's coming out.
Yes.
And actually, so our goal is to have it come out, and I think this is very probable. We haven't announced it officially, but our what we really like to see happen is 11/5, which is the inverse of our anniversary, which is 5/11.
Oh yes, I was thinking 11/11. You would say 11/11.
We've talked about that too. Also, possibly 11/18, and we were married in 2018. So it will definitely be November for sure. One of those dates. It will have live links on Amazon and on our website. So that loveandlateryears.com. That's there will definitely be a link to purchase the book on our website directly. Also, if you sign up for a Lily letter, we'll be sure to let you know when we sell the book, but we'll just continue sending free content as well each week.
So good. So find them if you're not already following them on Love and Later Years on Facebook to start with, and then you can go to all these other places and Instagram. Anyway, well, thanks, Tykert. I love you guys. I love all that you guys are doing. And they do have they have words of wisdom that are not empty thoughts. It's all coming from their heart, from their experience, from their inspiration that God is working through them for us. So thank you guys. And I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Letting go of every single dream, I lay each one down at your feet. Every moment of my wandering never changes what you see.